Before we get into it, I want to say a really big thank you to Clip Studio Paint for sponsoring this video. For anyone who might not be aware, Clip Studio Paint is a digital art program. There are different tools and settings available, so whether you want to make an illustration, whether you want to do comic work, or even animation, there's a lot of tools, a lot of really cool tools available to use in Clip Studio Paint. When I was approached by Clip Studio and was asked if I wanted to try out their program, I immediately said yes, and I immediately knew exactly what I wanted to do in this video. For returning viewers of this channel, you all know that I am currently in the process of creating my own comic series. And while I haven't made any pages of it yet, I definitely really want to try out a number of different ways to make the pages, from paneling to adding speech bubbles and text and all of that fun stuff. I wasn't exactly sure how to go about it because the program that I typically use doesn't have those sorts of tools. So I figured, let me give this a go. I've heard very good things about Clip Studio Paint in the past, and spoilers for this video. Oh my god, look at that. I'm having fun. Well, there's a whole... I enjoyed it a lot, and I was very impressed. And I thought that I would take you guys along on a little journey. I thought I would take you guys along with me as I give you my first impressions and overall thoughts. I don't want anyone to take this as a tutorial because I'm very new to this program myself, but I'm definitely very happy to show how my experience with it has gone so far. So let's do that. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Hope you're doing well. If you're a regular viewer on my channel, you might be thinking, hey, this is different. This is new. I was asked if I wanted to try out Clip Studio Paint, and I very eagerly said yes, because to be honest, every time I talk about digital art and I talk about a problem I have in digital art, or I explain something that I do with my digital art, I get so many people that are like, actually, Clip Studio Paint has this. Or like, oh, you should try Clip Studio Paint, it'll make this easier. So here you go, you guys won. You did it. I am here now. All jokes aside though, I am actually very excited to try Clip Studio Paint. I used it once, very briefly, years ago. My knowledge about how to use Clip Studio Paint is extremely limited. I'm going to be taking you guys along with me as I try out the program, give my first impressions, my overall thoughts, the whole shebang. A couple of things I do want to mention really quickly. First off, I did organize the actual workspace here just to make it something kind of similar to what I'm used to seeing. Using a different digital program is like trying to operate a spaceship, as I'm sure many of you are aware of. So I wanted to just make this like not as foreign to me. Also on the same topic, I did poke around the program just a tiny bit, just to get kind of familiar with the layout and how things work, so then that way this video isn't a complete train wreck. And the very last thing I want to mention, I adjusted some shortcut buttons so then that way I can use my tablet as I normally would. But in my very brief poking around the program before filming, I did come across a couple of fun features that I would certainly like to try. One of which we will actually see when we get a new canvas. One thing that I thought was really interesting when I went to go make something, I noticed like all of the different canvas presets. We got like just a regular illustration one. There's this one, which is for comics, and then this really long one is for like a webtoon or webcomic format, which I thought was really cool. I've never seen that in a digital program before. More comic stuff and animation. I haven't played around with the animation aspect of this program, but I mean, the animation takes a long time, so maybe that's for the best. We'll try and keep it kind of simple. I just thought that all the canvas presets were interesting, because for a lot of programs that I've seen, it's basically just like illustration and then maybe animation. But for the most part, it's just like the one type of canvas. So I was kind of surprised, pleasantly so, with all of the different preset stuff. Alright, one of the first things I wanted to do. Oh my god, look at that. Pen brush, okay, okay. The end of it looks like one of those like worm toys. I'm getting distracted. Another thing that I was very quick to notice was the large amount of brushes. Turnip. Nice. Calligraphy pen. I'm turning 21 in a month. Whoa. Whoa. Oh my god. I was also a little surprised to see that, like, there's the difference between, like, different pen and different pencil tools. Because typically there's a pen tool and then a pencil tool. Oh my god, and there's pastels! I'm having fun. I feel like some of these brushes might take a bit of getting used to if you're like me and are just used to having like 2 that you use, but I think you can get a lot of fun effects with these. Welcome to my video where I play with brushes for 10 hours. I can't help it, I'm having a lot of fun. Alright, maybe I'll put this in a time lapse and then just come back to you, because I feel like I'm gonna be here for a minute. All these brushes, dear lord. I believe you can also like adjust settings of the brushes. Hold on, you can like adjust stuff. So like the shape of the brush, you can adjust the thickness, the angle of like you can see it like changing in the thing. Why is there a cat crying at my door? Yo, another thing I noticed when I was like playing around, these like effect stuff. I saw this and was so excited. Look at it. Look at that. Look, there's a lot. Oh, you got all the sparkles for all the cute anime moments, you know? Make those cute anime moments. Got bloodstains for those cute anime moments. I'm having way too much fun with this. These like sort of pre-made assets where like right now there's nice speaking skills. This clothing stuff, right? So if you have details like this in your art, I mention a lot of comic making stuff. Comics take a really long time, so I could definitely see how stuff like this would be useful, especially this lace detail. Like, no one has time to draw that. Like, there's so many flowers. I'm learning so much about flowers right now. My knowledge of flowers is like, I know lilies and roses, I know those ones. And then like, sunflowers. Oh my god, I said that in the sunflowers. The sunflower brush came up. What, coincidence? I think not. Okay, it says vegetation. I thought it said vegetables for a minute, and then I saw like leaves. I'm like, is there something I'm missing? I feel like if there's any of the pre-made assets like this that I'm gonna use the most, it would be these ones, because I'm really bad at drawing nature scenes. Barbed wire for the cute anime scenes. Yo, these bubbles look so cool. It's a bubble if I've ever seen one. I need to stop. I say as I keep going. You know, I wasn't expecting to swatch every single brush and preset available, but here we are. I might have gotten a little carried away. I spent a lot of time. Oh my god, there's eraser. I'm not gonna swatch the erasers. There's something else I wanted to test out real quick, so I'm gonna doodle something. Can you guess what I'm drawing? It's me. Don't worry, I'm planning on making an actual, like, good drawing, I promise. But another thing that just really stood out to me is these things, right? Over here on this side of the screen. But there's a lot of stuff. As you can see, you can download various things. That's what this little cloud is here for. I'm not gonna try out all of these because God will be here for a week, but there's so many. Got these things, which we'll get to later on in the video. Oh yeah, there's also like 3D models and stuff, which is very neat, very 10 out of 10. There we go. Wait, where's the gradient tool? Whoa, hold on, wait. I just gotta, there's a whole, what? Oh my god, okay, hold on. I was expecting just a gradient. There's so much here. Let's see, how do I preserve opacity? I just realized I had not saved throughout this entire, hold on. We'll call this pure art. Because if there's any piece of work that belongs in a museum, it's this. So now, the thing that I'm most curious to try out is comic settings. You can go here, and this is like for when you print a comic. This is like where your actual comic picture would go. This part up here, this is where you don't want your picture to be. This is like everything that'll get cut off. This is like, will probably get cut off, extra room. That's the best way I know. I can explain stuff. Over here in this tool section, I believe there's, yes, actual comic stuff. So you can make borders, you can make the panels, you can cut the panels, you can do this. There's like these framing templates here where like the other stuff, you just drag it and then it's here. There's like a different format between like a webcomic and a traditional comic. I'm planning on having mine be formatted more like a traditional comic because it's my dream to like have a thing printed. But you could probably use this to like help with posting, right? So you can like make your thing over here or like even in here, and then you can like copy and paste it all in here and like arrange it or whatever. For webcomics, you more like, you draw your thing and then we'll have dog. You know how dogs look. Wow, I'm an artist. Okay. For the bulk of this video, I am going to switch over to a speed paint type of mode, and I'm going to be working on making a comic. I know, just the comic to make. I put this in a video recently. I think it was looking through an old art video. I was going to redraw this entire comic. I only made the first 2 pages, but I was planning on having it be a thing like this, where it's like a full finished thing. So I figured, let me redraw it. I'm not gonna make the whole thing because the original thing was planned to be 5 pages and I don't got that kind of time right now. But I am very more than happy to redraw this first page. Maybe I'll redraw this one now and then I'll redraw this one in the future and then maybe I'll make the rest of it. For new viewers, by the way, this is Rory. And then this, you can't see him. This is Luca. They are characters of mine, they are twins, and they have a lovely relationship. So, I'm definitely excited because I did this in my other program where there's no comic making stuff. I had to make the speech bubbles myself, I had to write the stuff in myself. So I'm excited to not have to do that. So I'm going to hand it over to voiceover Oliver while I turn into time-lapse Oliver and redraw this. I guess to start, I'll talk about the changes that I made to the actual comic page itself. And then after that, I'll talk about a variety of tools that I used, how I used them, things I learned, and overall thoughts, anything along those lines. Right from the start, I knew that the general composition of the comic page was going to be pretty similar to the original that you were seeing, because this original actually isn't an original. I'm redrawing a redraw, basically, and this is technically the 4th iteration of this page. By the time I had drawn this 3rd version of it, it's not perfect, definitely, but I had a much better understanding of like comic page compositions, and so visually, like the layout of all of the panels and everything, I think it's pretty solid, so I knew that that was going to stay the same for the most part. I think one of the biggest changes to the composition is that I decided to make the bottom panel go all the way to the edges of the canvas, which after I made this, like the day after I drew this, I had the thought of like, I should have made the bottom panel, I guess like not really a panel, and I should have just made it like the entire, like just make it like a big illustration thing. But I didn't think about that until after I made it, so I guess something to note for next time. I think that could have really helped just make it look a little bit more interesting, like you can see in the background of the full body picture of Rory. In the background there's like a loose drawing of like a door. I feel like if I were to play around with a couple of more ideas, and if I made the bottom panel like not really a panel and just like the full spread with those 2 other panels like floating on top of it, I think it could have made some really fun visual stuff, but you know, I'm still learning. So you'll also notice that the pose that the full body picture of Rory is in, that changed slightly. Their story changed quite a bit recently, so that said, they aren't in school anymore, so I got rid of her backpack. So instead of having her hold a backpack, I opted for her just having a hand on the hip, and then I changed the pose of the hand closer to her face just to make it seem a little bit more natural. And then originally, I really wanted to keep the pose of the legs the same, so then that way it felt more like she was walking into Luca's room, but I had a really hard time drawing it. You probably will see or have seen me struggling with her leg. So in the end, I just decided to not. I couldn't get it. It was one of those art days, you know? I couldn't get it right, so I gave up. Maybe not the best advice, but it's what I did. I think it would be a more solid pose if she were still depicted like in a more walky type of pose. I think that the end result that I made turned out a little bit more stiff than I would have hoped, but I mean, it gets the job done. The second picture, technically the first panel that I made, generally is the same. The only difference that I really decided to make is I changed the posing of Rory a little bit. I wanted you to see more of her facial expression, so I just tilted her head to the side a little bit more, so it's almost like a side profile rather than like the behind the head shot. And then the third, the pose, pretty much the same. The only difference is her actual expression itself. In the original, she looked more disappointed. Here, she looks more angry. I just thought that given who the characters are and the situation that they're in, that would suit her a lot better. And the bottom panel, I think, is the most different from all of them. I completely changed the angle of it. I don't think that the bottom panel is necessarily bad in the original one. I don't know, I feel like in a different sort of comic spread it would work a little bit better, but I think just how the flow of this page work and like the emotions in it, I guess. I don't know, I felt like this sort of composition was a lot better. I put the camera kind of behind Luca's sleeping body so you can see a little bit of his face and Rory's in the background being real mad. I just thought that this helped to convey the mood a lot better than the original, so that's why I went with this. Like I said earlier, I knew that the composition of the page would generally be the same, but that said, I still wish that I did some thumbnails before filming this. In my head, I figured if I'm going to be keeping the composition generally the same, I shouldn't really need thumbnails anyway. Mostly in the bottom panel, you'll probably notice that Rory's hand that's close to the door frame, and then the door frame itself actually gets completely covered by a speech bubble later on. It's not a bad thing, but if I had known that that's what was going to happen, I definitely would have saved a lot of time with drawing things out and coloring. I didn't think a whole lot about the placement of speech bubbles, which is something that I normally do whenever I do make these sort of comic pages, but again, I was going under the assumption that the composition would be generally the same, so I just assumed the speech bubbles would be the same, but clearly they were not. Moving on to the different parts of the program I use, the first thing I want to make note of is that I ended up going with the illustration canvas. In the future, like I said earlier in the video, I really want to print a comic, so at that point I will probably use the other comic template that they have available, but for this one I figured it's just a thing I'm gonna make to post on the internet, so I figured using the illustration canvas would be just fine for this one. And another thing that I wanted to note is that I ended up using one of the pre-made templates. Even the templates themselves, like, you can use them just as they are, that's perfectly fine, but they're also very customizable. You can delete panels, you can move panels, you can divide those panels up. You can absolutely use the panel tools to create your own panels, divide your own panels up. If you don't have a general idea of where you want to go, or if you do have an idea and there's a template that's exactly or almost exactly of what you're looking for, so you can use them as is, or they're very easy to make adjustments. I picked a template where there's 4 smaller panels on the top and in the middle of the page, and then a larger one on the bottom. I just ended up deleting the 2 closest to the left, and then I ended up adjusting the size of the other 2 smaller ones just a little bit. That's something that I really appreciated, even though that they are pre-made templates, like, you don't have to use them as is. They're made for you to use however you want to use them, and that includes changing them up as much as you want. Another thing I want to mention, I don't really know when I'll get an opportunity to mention it, so I'll just say it right here. I ended up adjusting my brushes settings as I went. Unsurprisingly, different digital art programs, the brushes have different properties, even like the basic default brush in a lot of them, even though in terms of the texture and the effect, a lot of the time in digital art programs those are similar, but as you saw earlier in this video, the pen pressure sensitivity was off the charts. I ended up just toning it down just a little bit to make it something that I'm a little bit more used to working with. The type of muscle memory that I have in my hand, and just how I'm used to working, I wasn't quite used to using it, so I just made it something that my hand could adjust to a little bit easier, but adjusting the settings was super easy. It only took a couple of seconds. But back to the paneling. One of the things that I thought was really neat is that each panel actually is in its own folder. When you import a template, all of the panels are grouped into a folder, and then in that folder, each panel has its own little group. And so you would go into one of the groups, you would add layers within that group, but it would only apply to that panel. So making changes within each panel was really, really easy and very convenient because I didn't have to worry about messing up any of the other panels. One thing that I do want to mention, for a good portion of this video, I accidentally had this ruler setting turned on the panel stuff. I didn't know that was a thing. Like I said, I'm new to this program, so I figured I'll mention it for anyone else who's new using this. I ended up right-clicking the little ruler sort of icon, I guess. It's not really a ruler. What's that triangle type ruler called? That thing. There's a little that icon. If you go to the layers, there's that little triangle ruler thing. I right-clicked that and turned off the ruler thing, and then it made my life a lot easier. But at first, like, I didn't think that that was a thing, so I didn't understand what was going on. I was going closer to the edges of the panel, and then all of a sudden it got all weird, and it was an issue, but it was a really easy fix. The more you know. I've learned that this program has so many little things like that, where it's like, I wouldn't even think of having a setting like that. I clearly, because I didn't even know it was turned on. But I think that that just goes to show how much there is in this program. There's for sure a lot of stuff that I still don't even know about it, so I'm very excited to play around with everything that this program has to offer. Another thing that took a little bit of getting used to is using the different layer modes. Generally speaking, layer modes are pretty consistent between each digital art program, but just like with the brushes, even if the general function and feel of it, I guess, even if that's the same throughout all of the digital art programs, it's still, they're not exactly the same. So you'll see later on, especially when I start playing around with lighting effects like I often do in my art, it took a little bit of getting used to. Of course, I stuck some good old multiply layer. That's my fave. Multiply layers and I go way back. But to get like the more like light, shine, glowy effect thing, I had to play around with a couple of different ones. I think I ended up using 2 separate ones throughout here. I think I ended up using both brightness and add glow. So there we go. That's a fun little thing about this drawing. Normally I just stick to the one, but I don't know, I felt like the different panels benefited from different things. One of the tools that I found absolutely life-changing in this program was the lasso fill tool. So when I colored digitally, right, in my other program I use the lasso tool, and then I go all around the edges of my line art and I use the fill shortcut key to like fill in the selection. What a lot of people will do with digital art, they'll select the outside of their line art and then invert the selection and then fill that. But because of the way that I do line art, I can't exactly do that. I don't close all of my lines because I really like the way that it looks. I think in the end it makes for better line art, at least for my personal style. But also as a result, I do have to spend a lot more time coloring because I can't take those sorts of shortcuts, and at this point in my life, that was the best shortcut I found, is just using the lasso tool, outlining everything, filling it in as I go. This program has the lasso fill tool, which kind of it's pretty self-explanatory to be honest, but it's a lasso tool, but every time you close the selection, as soon as it's closed, it automatically fills it in with any color that you have selected, which is incredible. It saves so much time, and you might be thinking, how much time does it really save? It literally just, all you do is you have to press an extra button. Normally, the amount of times you would have to press that button, it saves so much time. Digital art is all about saving time and all about shortcuts. This lasso fill tool changed my life. The lasso fill tool is what I did to make like the solid color block like I often do, and it's what I did to put in all of the flat colors, and I even used it for like larger shaded areas. I think the most prominent place I did this was in the bottom panel on Luca. Since the whole front part of him is shaded, I ended up using the lasso fill tool to fill in a chunk of his body and I think even his face and hair. But it's a very good tool. If you don't know about it, it's not under the lasso tool. I can't remember exactly where it is as I'm recording this audio, but I will put some stuff on screen now showing you where it is. Absolutely amazing. Mwah, chef kiss, 10 out of 10. But as I was working and learning all of these new little shortcuts and new little tools I could use, I quickly found myself falling into a rhythm and a similar routine. This took me 8 hours to make, which is a lot longer than I typically spend on digital art, but that's to be expected considering that this is a comic page. And honestly, considering that this is a program that I've never used before, I was expecting it to take a lot longer. This program is very easy to get used to, and there's also a lot of very convenient tools that just help speed up the process a lot. Another one of which is the speech bubble tool. The speech bubble tool is pretty much exactly how it sounds. It's a tool that makes speech bubbles. You know how a lot of digital art programs have like that shape maker tool where you draw and then boom, it's a shape, fills it in and it's a shape. It works kind of like that, but it's not exactly the same. With like a regular shape tool, like it's just that. You make the shape and it's there. But with the speech bubble tool, aside from being able to customize both like bubble color and the outline color, there's also a bubble tail tool. Not every speech bubble needs a tail, but when they do need tails, it's very easy to add one. After you make that basic circle shape of the speech bubble, you go to the tail tool, go right onto the speech bubble, and you draw the tail. Another thing that they have is they have a speech bubble brush. Basically, you draw the shape of your own speech bubble. Personally, I don't think I'm going to be using that too often, just because, you know, I feel like I can't trust myself to make the shapes look good. If you go into the material section of the program, like I was showing you guys earlier, not only is that where I found the panel templates, but there's also pre-made speech bubbles. I believe you can download even more speech bubbles. I believe they're made from just other artists that they put out into the world, available for you to use, which is wonderful. For me, I just ended up using one that was already in the program. I used that one particularly just for the shouting in the last panel, and even though it is like a pre-made thing, it's still very customizable. I used one of the speech bubbles where there's all those like jagged edges. But it's so customizable. You can literally go into each little point on the spiky speech bubble, adjust their height, adjust like the arch, adjust how they're spaced out. And again, just I'm blown away by the pre-made things available. They're already good enough to use on their own, but they're also very, very customizable, so it's just super flexible to use. I was very happy with how they all worked. And then another way that the speech bubble tool varies from like your regular shape making tool, they're made to have text in them, right? Like speech bubbles are made to have text in them. So if you click on the speech bubble, it literally just treats text as a part of the speech bubble rather than its own thing, which is very nice. And speaking of text, so first of all, the text tool is great, right? Like, anything that I'm about to complain about is completely on me, but choosing fonts is a whole other art form in itself, and it is an art form that I am not very familiar with. So before I say anything about fonts, I just want to say, is the font that I picked good for comics? Absolutely not. Did I try? Yes. But it still doesn't look good. I was planning on learning a lot more about fonts closer to when I start making the pages of my comic, but clearly that time has not come yet. If anyone has any tips for picking fonts, or if you have any fonts for comics that you really like, leave a comment down below. Maybe I'll make an updated version of this where I'll have a font that looks less stupid. It's not a bad font, just a bad font for comics. Also, speaking of the text tools, I did end up losing a large amount of the footage of me putting in the text because my recording program that I use to screen record, there are keyboard shortcuts to stop the recording and then pause and play the recording. They are S and P, both the letters are in the text, so I wasn't really thinking about that when I was putting the text in. That's why most of the footage of me putting in the text isn't there, but I mean, we've already established you're not missing much anyway because of my poor font selection. But overall, great text tool, 10 out of 10. There's a bunch of fonts available to you already, but there's also a lot of things available, like making them bold, making them italic. You can edit the space between letters, you can edit the space between like the actual words, like whenever you make it on a new line, you can edit the space between that. But yeah, I definitely think that that's one of the things I need to work on most for my comic is text and fonts. So if you have any advice, let me know, particularly for Clip Studio Paint. Because like I said, I'm still very new to this program, but I'm definitely going to continue using it for comic work. I'm very, very happy with how this performed. Even though this was essentially my first time using the program, I am absolutely blown away by it. I'm so happy with how it performed. I'm so happy with how easy it was to adjust. And actually, after I finished this page, I had so much fun that I feel like I definitely want to go and make the other pages to this comic now. I'll probably use Clip Studio Paint for that, so stay tuned for that at some point. But that is about all I have for you for this video, so if you liked it, give this video a thumbs up. If you liked the comic page that I made, let me know. And before we go, I just wanted to give another thank you to Clip Studio Paint for letting me try out your program. I really, really enjoyed it, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. And if you are new here, hello, my name is Oliver. I post new videos here every single Wednesday and additional bonus videos whenever I can. I share a lot of my art on this channel, in case you couldn't guess. I would just really like to share what I have to share, which is my art. So if you can subscribe, I would really, really appreciate that. I'd love to have you around. And if you want to see more from me, you can follow me on social media, which will be on screen now and linked in the description box below. I am most active on Instagram, and that is where I post my art other than here on YouTube. So if that's what you want to see from me, go follow me over there. And there will be some videos on screen now and linked in the iCard for you to check out if you want. Again, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.